I had been staring at the same wall for 20 minutes when Warren finally walked through the front door. He smelled like her perfume. My mother's perfume. The same lavender scent she had worn since I was a little girl, sitting on her bathroom counter watching her get ready. I knew that smell the way I knew my own name. I knew it in my sleep. And now it was hanging off my husband's collar at 11 o'clock on a Thursday night. I did not cry. I did not move. I just sat very still in the dark living room and waited for him to notice me sitting there. He did not expect that. He jumped when he saw me. Then he recovered fast, the way liars always do. "You're still up," he said, like I had done something strange. I looked at him for a long moment. My hands were calm in my lap. My voice, when it came out, was quieter than I expected. "Warren," I said, "why did you sleep with my mother?" The question sat in the air between us like smoke. I watched his face move through 3 different expressions in 2 seconds. Denial, calculation, then something that looked almost like relief. That last one told me everything I needed to know. He had been carrying this secret, and it had been heavy. He did not apologize. That was the part that broke something inside me, though I did not let him see it break. He sat down across from me, loosened his tie, and said, "Noelle, your mother is a lonely woman. She has been lonely since your dad left. I just gave her someone to talk to. It grew into something else." He said it like he had done a kind thing, like he had simply been generous with his time. I sat with those words. I let them land. I looked at my husband of 3 years, this man I had married at 21, and I realized I was looking at a complete stranger, wearing a very familiar face. I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I had seen women do that in films, and it always looked like the person doing the throwing was the one who lost. So instead, I stood up, smoothed my trousers, and told him I was going to bed. He looked confused. He had expected a fight. Maybe he had even wanted one, because a fight would have let him flip the blame around. I did not give him that. I walked down the hallway and closed our bedroom door behind me. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, and I thought, very carefully, about everything I owned. I was 24 years old, and the list was longer than Warren had ever bothered to find out. My name is Noelle Adaeze Briggs. I started my event planning business, Noelle Briggs Events, at 19 years old, out of my university dorm room. By the time Warren and I married 3 years ago, the business was already profitable enough that I had bought my own property. The house we lived in was in my name alone. I purchased it at 22 with money I had saved and a small loan I cleared in 14 months. The car Warren drove to work every morning was mine too. Bought cash the year before our wedding. His name was not on the deed, not on the car title, and not on my business accounts. He had never asked to be added to any of it. That was his first mistake. The next morning I called my best friend Simone before Warren even woke up. I stepped into the backyard and spoke low and steady. "He slept with my mother," I said. Simone went completely silent for 4 full seconds. Then she exhaled slowly and said, "Tell me everything." I told her. She did not gasp or interrupt once. She listened the way she always had, with her whole self. When I was done, she asked me one question. "What are you going to do?" I told her I did not know yet, but I was thinking. Simone said, "Then think fast. Men like Warren move slow until they don't." She was right about that. She usually was. I went to see my mother 2 days later. I needed to look at her face. Gloria Adaeze was 46 years old, still sharp, still composed in the way some women are when life has already tested them hard before. She had been raising me alone since I was 15, when my father walked out without much of an explanation. When I knocked on her door that afternoon, she answered slowly, and the moment she saw my eyes, hers dropped to the floor. She could not look at me. She opened the door wider and let me in without a word. We sat at her small kitchen table in silence for almost a full minute. Then she said, "Noelle, I am so sorry." I nodded once. I believed her. But sorry was not enough to cover what she had done. I asked her how long it had been going on. She looked at the table and said, "Almost 8 months. 8 months. I had been building my client list, planning corporate dinners, and running a growing business while my husband and my mother had been meeting behind my back for 8 whole months. I did not cry at her table. I had decided I would not cry anywhere either of them could see me do it. I told her I needed time, and that I would call her when I was ready to talk more. Then I drove home slowly with the radio off, feeling something cold and very clear settling into the center of my chest. Something that felt less like heartbreak and more like a decision forming steadily in the quiet. 2 weeks passed. Warren and I moved around each other in that house like two people sharing a waiting room. He tried twice to have a real conversation. I kept things polite and surface level. He did not know what to do with my calmness, which was exactly why I kept it. Then one night, just after 10 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Gloria. Her voice was trembling so badly it took me a moment to understand what she was actually saying. "Noelle," she said, "I need to tell you something." I already felt it before the words came, the way you sense cold air before a door opens fully. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. The line went so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat pressing against the phone. I sat with that information for the entire night. I did not call Warren into the room. I did not go to him with it. I just sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea that went cold beside me, and I thought the whole situation through to the very end. My mother was 46 years old. It was uncommon, but not impossible. I thought carefully about what the pregnancy meant for each of them. I thought about the kind of people they had shown me they were. Somewhere around 2 in the morning, something inside me became completely still. Not numb, not broken. Still, like the moment just before you make a move you have already decided on and cannot take back. In the morning, I called my attorney. Brenda Osei had been my business attorney since I launched the company at 19. She was composed, precise, and never wasted a single word. I sat across from her desk on a Tuesday morning and laid everything out clearly. The affair, my mother's age, the pregnancy, the 3-year marriage. She listened without interrupting. Then she asked me to walk her through every asset and every account. I did. She took careful notes. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "Noelle, you are in a very strong position. He has no legal claim to your house, your business, or your personal savings. This divorce filing will be clean and straightforward." I told her to begin immediately. She picked up her pen without needing another word from me. While Brenda prepared the paperwork, I did my own quiet audit at home. I went through every drawer, every file, every shared folder on our home computer. Warren had not hidden much because he had never thought he needed to. He had lived in my house for 3 years, and somewhere along the way, he had started thinking of it as his house too. He had driven my car and started calling it our car. He had eaten meals I paid for and slept in rooms I furnished and built a comfortable life on a foundation I had laid entirely by myself. He had confused my generosity with shared ownership. He had mistaken my quietness for someone who was not paying close attention. That was going to cost him everything. I served him the divorce papers on a Friday evening. I placed them on the kitchen counter while he was pouring himself a glass of water, and I stood back quietly and waited. He picked them up slowly. He read the first page. Then he set his glass down carefully and looked at me with something sitting between disbelief and forced calm. "You can't just do this," he said. I told him I already had. He flipped through the pages faster now. The house, the car, the business. His name appeared nowhere that mattered. He looked up at me, and for the first time in 3 years I watched Warren look genuinely afraid. Not of me, of what was left for him without me. "Where am I supposed to go?" he asked quietly. I looked toward the front door. He called his brother that night. He called 2 friends after that. He sat in the living room making quiet, urgent calls for nearly 2 hours while I moved around him completely unbothered, washing dishes, checking client emails, living my life at full volume. Nobody could offer him a place right away. Then I heard him move to the hallway. His voice dropped even lower. "Gloria," he said, "I need somewhere to stay for a while, just until I sort things out." A short pause. Then, "Thank you." He moved his belongings into my mother's house the following Saturday morning. 2 people who had built a secret romance now had to build something real inside a 2-bedroom house with a leaking shower and a baby arriving in less than 6 months. The house went quiet after he left. Beautifully, deeply quiet. I stood in the center of the living room and just breathed. Simone came over that evening with food and sparkling juice, and we sat on my kitchen floor and talked until midnight. She asked me if I was okay. I told her I was better than okay. I told her I felt like myself again, which was something I had not fully felt in a long time. Living beside someone who slowly drains you is something you stop noticing because it happens so gradually, but you feel the exact moment it stops. The air in my house that Saturday night tasted different, lighter, like it had always belonged to me and was simply reminding me of that fact. Reality moved into my mother's house fast. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom with a shower that had been leaking since the previous winter. A kitchen built for 1 person moving comfortably and 2 people moving carefully. Gloria was in her first trimester and exhausted in a way that genuinely surprised her, because pregnancy at 46 was nothing like pregnancy at 22. She needed rest and support and patience. Warren had been drawn to excitement and secrecy and desire. He had not thought about prenatal checkups or medical bills or the particular kind of daily, unglamorous effort that a real situation demands from you. The gap between what he had imagined and what was actually in front of him kept growing wider every week. Simone told me things were already shifting over there within the first month. She had a close friend living 2 streets from my mother's house, and in a neighborhood like that one, people notice things and they talk. Neighbors had begun piecing together the story. Women from my mother's church who had known her for 15 years became polite in that careful way that means they have already made up their minds and chosen their distance. My Aunt Felicia stopped returning her calls. The warmth of a community is something most people never think about until it is quietly and completely withdrawn. My mother had not calculated that part of the cost. Warren had not thought about it at all. Secrecy had made everything feel brave and possible. Without it, things looked like exactly what they were. He texted me 6 weeks after leaving. I saw his name on my screen late on a Sunday night, and I set my phone face down and did not open the message for a full day. When I finally did, it said, "I didn't think it would be like this." That was everything he sent. No specific admission, no real apology, just 1 sentence dropped into silence, waiting for me to reach back and ask what he meant so he could explain himself into my sympathy. I stared at it for a while. Then I put my phone away and went back to reviewing a venue contract for a client event. Some messages are not really messages at all. They are just people realizing, too late, that they made a very poor trade and have nowhere comfortable left to land. My mother called me on a Wednesday afternoon, 2 months after Warren moved in. She was crying before she finished saying my name. She told me he was distant, that he spent most evenings on his phone facing the wall, that he had snapped at her twice over small, ordinary things. She sounded smaller than I had ever heard her in my entire life. Something moved through me then. Not satisfaction, not cold pleasure, but a tired and complicated sadness. She was still my mother. She had made a choice that broke something real between us, but she was still the woman who had raised me alone for 9 years without ever once complaining about it. "Gloria," I said quietly, "the version of him you fell for only existed because it was all hidden. Now you're living with the rest of him." There was no baby shower. Gloria had believed that even through all the difficulty, her family and her church friends would still show up for her when it truly mattered. She had trusted that love, even messy, complicated, late-arriving love, would soften the harder edges of what she had chosen. But Aunt Felicia did not come. My cousin sent short, careful messages and nothing more. The women from her church, women she had cooked beside and prayed with for over a decade, organized nothing. No balloons, no little sandwiches on a paper-covered table, no laughter filling a small room. Just Gloria and Warren in that house, trying to hold together something that had been built entirely in darkness and was now sitting fully exposed in the light. Warren started asking questions about the pregnancy. I heard this through Simone, who heard it from her friend 2 streets over. He had started asking Gloria whether she was completely certain the baby was his. Those words, inside those walls, must have landed like something dropping and shattering. She had given up her daughter's trust, her community's warmth, and her family's closeness for this man. And now he was sitting across from her in a small house asking if she was sure. Trust between 2 people who depended entirely on secrecy to survive is a fragile, particular thing. Once one of them stops extending it fully, there's nothing else left beneath them. Cracks in small spaces do not stay small for long. The baby came 3 weeks early on a rainy Tuesday morning in October. Warren called me from the hospital. I genuinely do not know why he chose to call me. Perhaps old habit, perhaps because I had always been the steady one, the person he reached toward when something felt too large to hold alone. I let it ring. I was in the final hour of a walkthrough for a charity gala I had spent 2 months building from the ground up, and my client was standing right beside me reviewing the table arrangements. The event was beautiful. Every single detail landed exactly right. Afterward, I sat alone in my car in the parking lot and checked my phone. One missed call. One photo sent to my number. A tiny face wrapped in a white hospital blanket. I looked at it for a long time, then I drove home in the quiet. In the months after that, the messages from Warren stopped completely. My mother and I had one long, necessary conversation on her back porch in November, just the two of us, with cups of tea we barely touched. We said all the things that had been sitting unsaid for months. She cried through most of it. I stayed dry-eyed and spoke as evenly as I could. We did not hug when it ended. We said goodbye at her gate like two women who shared blood and years, and were slowly learning how to share nothing else for a while. I drove back to my side of the city, went into my office, and worked late into the evening because work had always made a kind of sense that people sometimes could not. The business was growing, that I could always count on. By the following spring, Noel Briggs Events had its strongest quarter since I started the company at 19. I hired 2 new coordinators. I signed a 12-event annual contract with a hotel group that had been on my wish list for 2 years. I moved the office to a larger space downtown with tall windows and a small balcony where I drank my coffee in the mornings before my first meetings of the day. Simone threw me a small dinner when the hotel contract came through. Just 8 people around a table, good food, real laughter, the kind of easy evening that reminds you what life is supposed to feel like when you are living it fully on your own terms. I was 24 years old. Everything around me had been built by my own hands. It showed. When people ask me now if I regret how I handled it all, I tell them the truth without hesitating. I do not regret a single quiet move I made. I used to believe the worst thing that could happen to a young woman was to be betrayed at once by the 2 people she had trusted most completely. But what I understand now is that betrayal, when you refuse to panic and refuse to collapse, can be the most clarifying thing that ever enters your life. Warren did not take my world apart. He and my mother handed each other a reality they were nowhere near ready for. And I stepped out of the middle of it calmly, with everything that was mine, my house, my business, my name, and my peace, while they stepped fully into everything they had chosen together. They believed they were taking something from me, but all they ever had was each other. And it turned out, that was more than enough trouble on its own.